Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the creator economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Collins. Dan he's a senior director and head of Agentic systems at Invisible Technologies. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation with him today, where we're going to be looking at all things AI and Agentic systems. Dan, thank you very much for joining us on the show. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Great to be here, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. It's an exciting space that you're in, and it's something that's ever evolving. For people that are unaware of Invisible Technologies, maybe you could share a little bit about what you guys do, how you got into it, and where you kind of see the space evolving over the next, say, years to come, because it's always changing.
Absolutely. No, that's one thing about AI, is always changing. So Invisible Technologies is a AI platform company. And so we are looking at a way to have an orchestration layer where we stitch together all the necessary components. So we have 5 core modules: Measurable, which is our expert marketplace; Neuron, which is our data orchestration piece; we have Atomic, which is our workflow process and orchestration piece; we have Axon, which is our Agentic AI, where we build agents for custom use cases; and we have Synapse, which is our evaluation piece. Between those 5, we stitch those together, and they comprise what we call the AI Invisible AI platform. And that is what we leverage and deploy to our clients to help them build, adopt, and scale. And as per our tagline, make AI work in the enterprise. Company started about 10 years ago, and it was a BPO, a business process outsourcing company, with human agents doing the work that AI agents do now. We've trained 80% of the largest models, worked with most of the hyperscalers. And then in the last kind of 2 years, we've transitioned to more into the enterprise, working with enterprise clients to solve really complex use cases. I've been with the company since April of last year. I used to work for our now CEO, Matt Fitzpatrick, QuantumBlack AI by McKinsey. And when he made the jump, it seemed like a really good time to make the shift, given the kind of attention and the traction that AI was gaining in the market. And it is a kind of once in a lifetime technological advancement that I think is going to set us up well. So I joined here in April of last year, and I've loved it. My forecast, we just did a report, just a cheeky plug for Invisible's AI trends report for 26, what we think is going to happen. We don't believe that we'll achieve full AGI. I think that this year, the last 2 years have been kind of tinkering with getting serious. Is AI there for the long term, and kind of doing pilot after pilot of the benefits? I think now we're going to get to a space where we look to operationalize it at scale in the enterprise to derive all the benefits we've been promised to date.
Yeah, it's super interesting space to be in. One thing there you mentioned, you don't think that we'll get to AGI, and this is kind of like the North Star for a lot of AI companies, and they say it's a few years off. What do you think are the limitations between where we are now and between getting there? And like, what are the blockers from what you see?
There's only so much data in the world that can be consumed to educate a model to a place where it becomes AGI, almost sentient, right? To have that intelligence of a human being. There's also a lot of compute challenges that we're going to see. And it's just kind of a kind of precursor to AGI is RSI, which is recursive self-improvement. So rather than the need to be prompted like a young child, or AI is kind of an excitable teenager now, in that it wants to have all the answers, but it will hallucinate. And in its sycophantic like quest to please you, it will say what it thinks you want to hear, or what it thinks is right versus knowing for sure. So getting it to a place that it can keep educating itself and learn by doing and build that pattern recognition on vast amounts of data, I think is going to be very important. And those are some of the challenges that it's going to need humans for the foreseeable future. Hence why we say no AGI. RSI, once we strike that, I think that AGI will be a fast follower. Yeah, compute, people, data that it can consume is kind of the general synthesis of why we don't think it's going to happen tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah. RSI, for people that are unaware, what does RSI mean?
Recursive self-improvement. So like teaching itself and learning by doing and improving over time.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's a really interesting space to be in, because I imagine when you work where you are, you see it from both sides. You see what the technology can do, but you also see then when you go into an organization that has been set up for a number of years, it has its processes, its limitations, what it wants to do, and you try and put AI into that, there's always kind of a challenge that, you have a very powerful technology, a business that could be probably maybe operated more efficiency, but it's not just as simple as just dropping it in and letting it go. What kind of things, when enterprise companies come to you, what are the kind of problems that they come with specifically with AI that they're trying to achieve?
I think the key one is not getting it to scale. So they can find a use case and do a very compelling pilot that works and they love it. And they have a real-time convincing execs to scale it across the org. Or it does one thing very well, but then can't do multiple or iterative tasks. And the reason for that is that they treat it, a lot of the large enterprises tend to overestimate the kind of set it and forget it approach of AI, right? You can't just drop it in and hope for the best out of the box. It's going to take time and it's going to take iterations over time, training, improvements, etc. So I think that the key piece here is that a real deployment of anything needs monitoring, it needs retraining, it needs steering and tweaking, and then there's frequent updates that need to happen. And I think that that's where the challenge is. And I think the key thing is they don't budget enough for change management. So adoption fails without that frontline buy-in. So invest up front, and then the catalyst of all of that, going back a couple of steps, is probably framing a compelling use case that has the KPI and metrics with a tangible business owner that is going to make sure that this gets off the ground, even if it's proved to be successful in a pilot phase.
Yeah. So
absolutely, yeah. And I think that you need buy-in. So we work with a lot of IT leaders, which is great, but they're not the executive decision maker that's going to approve the budget to make this thing scale across an organization. So making sure you've got not only a champion, but the right one.
What if you were, say, somebody that's starting a company from scratch today and you see that there's so much AI technology and there's certain things that can be automated, maybe not starting a company, but somebody that's taken over a leadership role in an enterprise company and they see that there's a huge amount that they can do with AI. What would you see in your experience as like kind of even small quick wins that you can get with AI that can be proven, like whether it's a cost saving or whether it's a business efficiency in some way? What are the case like kind of quick wins, I suppose, to get buy-in that you've seen work successfully?
Sure. Okay. So I think one of the key examples we're seeing are very kind of mundane, repetitive tasks that have little nuance or little variability. So it's the same thing. So batch reporting at the end of a month or insurance, batch credit memos, claims processing, those kind of things that don't change month to month, the generation of bank statements. Some organizations have still got human teams of 13 plus people working on this, and it's their one job to run that report every month, batch those files and send them out. We can automate that. The one thing that I think is key to point out here is that when we use AI, it's not all agentic, and there's sometimes a very simple process like claim credit memos or claims processing. You wouldn't bring full-scale agentic AI. You could, if there's not many variables in the functions of that frame, you do an old automation script that have been around for years and you'd automate it. Some people want to use AI because they say they're using AI. Then they want to use agentic, say they're using agentic. I think bringing the right level of AI to the right use case has kind of been a mismatch that I've seen in the last couple of years. And I think like bringing agentic AI to credit memos would be like bringing a tank to a knife fight. You don't need that much. You've got too much tech. So some of those repetitive, stable, predictable processes can be automated. Those are your quick wins for organizations. A lot of the email replies, so like looking at screening emails, 1 or 2 agents that will look at your inbox, screen all your emails, get the context they need, pull it from elsewhere, draft a response, and then you as the user hit send. That's a very simple, honest example, but that can save 6 hours per person per day or per week. That's a huge time saving where they can then focus on stuff that requires that thought leadership and that kind of critical problem solving that AI cannot yet do. Those are some of the use cases that I think are really, I wouldn't say low hanging fruit. I think they're the quick wins and the foundation on which you can then scale AI in an organization. And it's accurate. It's quicker. Sorry to interrupt there, Mark. It's quicker. It's more accurate.
Go on ahead.
And it's cheaper. So an AI agent, they don't take an AI agent or a script. It doesn't take PTO. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't work 9-5. It doesn't take vacation. So I think that those are the kind of things where business can save money. And especially as we're streamlining resources and headcount, it's not about replacing people and jobs. It's replacing the boring, mundane stuff so the humans can focus on the stuff that only we can still do. I think that that's kind of the key unlock there.
Yeah. So from Invisible Technologies then, and you give an introduction in terms of what you do, but you were also mentioning off air in terms of like what you're focusing on for, say, the next 18 months or so is around kind of the specific kind of integrations or like helping specific businesses to get the best out of the technology. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of like how you work that way and how you help businesses integrate it successfully?
Sure. So everything starts in an organization is data. And so I know that we put a obsessive amount on data. So we say that the data is more important than the model, because data readiness shortens time to value more than a marginal model gain. So I think that everything starts with the data. Like garbage in, garbage out. Our founder Francis has this saying in a battle between bad data and good AI, bad data wins every time. So you can bring the best and most capable out, but unless you've got your data right. So one thing that we're really doing and using one of our modules, Neuron, as part of our platform is making sure the data's ready for the AI, because it's only as good as what you feed it and what you teach it. So I think as a starting point for most organizations, even if they say, right, we're ready, our data's clean, we want to run, we love to kind of pressure test that theory with our clients and make sure that they've got the data estate. There's no inconsistent schemas, there's no fragmentation, there's no missing fields or weak lineage. And we've got one source of truth of data that we trust and it's robust, that we can then build upon that foundation. So I think it all starts with the data for me. And then once I'm happy that the data is in a good space, then we build our use cases on top of that, leveraging automation scripts or multi-agentic systems, depends on the use case. I think that, carry on.
No, go on ahead.
I think that we're not very anchored to any one sector or vertical at the moment. We're doing a lot of work in the healthcare space. I do work in both the private and public sectors. We're doing a lot in the insurance space. And then we've got some really edge use cases. I'm not sure which ones I can and can't talk about, so I'll be vague on purpose, but we're doing some really great things with computer vision for herd and dairy management, agricultural management in the US. And we're doing some stuff with the US military. And all of those are around data and then leveraging that data in conjunction with, say, computer vision, which is then managing outcomes, which is enabling us to do the work of thousands of people with very few machines, managed by a critical human in the loop, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. When you look at like data, then what's the common themes that you see? Like if you run an analysis on data, what's some just common things that, like, if it continues, then it just basically completely tarnishes or reduces the quality of the data? What are the typical mistakes you see or the typical issues?
People are building on data they don't trust, or it isn't what we call clean data. So we have a thing called a medallion architecture where we have bronze, silver, gold, and it's bronze data. You wouldn't trust it, and you wouldn't trust it to start anything, or you wouldn't trust the outputs of any analysis run on it. We then go through and cleanse data. We do matching of fields, making sure there's no gaps in the data. It lines up. Haven't got two different data sources giving you competing information, kind of get into that one source of truth, as I mentioned. So it's kind of the fragmentation, the schemas, how data is structured. Is it structured, unstructured data? Is it raw? Do we know that there's complexity in there? Is there legacy redundant data that doesn't go anywhere? All of those points, it's kind of like bad parts of a recipe that you wouldn't like the taste if you tasted it. And so by just shipping bad data, it's like moving kind of raw sewage. We put it through, for a good analogy, is the water filtration process. So it's clean drinking water at the end that you would then want to consume. And that's how we look at data. So I think, and that's common across everywhere. 70% of the data, at least in the States, is 20 years old or more. Probably the same here. Absolutely true of the public sector when there's 40, 50-year-old data sets that we're still working on for critical infrastructure. So kind of making sure that we run this analysis to make sure that data is good before we scale it is important. And then one of the key ones is that different business units in an organization, their data doesn't speak to each other, or it isn't constructed or structured in a way that is cohesive, and it can never be brought together. So kind of having a general function or an orchestration layer to manage all of those different data sources is where we are really pushing at the moment.
So, and then when you mean data, it could be like anything from, say, when you're saying about bronze data, would this be like, let's say hypothetically it's a company and they've run some third-party data on some marketing campaign or something. They think that this audience has an interest in, let's say it's travel, but it's nothing being confirmed, but this data is on their CRM. There's an assumption there, but there's nothing confirmed. Is that kind of what you mean, like a kind of a bronze data example?
So bronze is the level of trust we put in the data. So a bronze data is we don't trust it. Silver is like, okay, we've now structured this. So bronze is raw, dirty, unstructured data. Silver would then be a level of, we've started to structure it. We understand the patterns. We're seeing repeatability, and we're starting to have a little bit more faith in the robustness of the data. And then the gold standard is where everyone wants to get to. I would bet my life on this data, and I would run a report and do an analysis, and based on that analysis I might place a trade, but because I really believe in my data and my research. That's kind of the different layers of kind of what we call the
Gotcha.
medallion architecture. And then so for a campaign like you mentioned in travel, looking at all of the customers in my CRM that have been to Thailand in the past, we've now got an offer on to go there. What's the likelihood that they'd want to go again based on this data? Or making sure you've got a contact email, a phone number, and a name and an address, etc. All of those things that you need to be successful with that campaign, making sure that was all in place and it was still valid. So the person hasn't moved. It's not been 10 years. They don't live there anymore. Making sure your data is as robust as possible. That is what you'd like to do before you then invest in a campaign to make sure you're going to see the appropriate returns.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that seems to be the case across a lot of things. Like if the data, the foundation that you have is not accurate or whatever, the conclusions are very inconsistent then as well, I guess.
Yeah, and anything you build, you're building on sand, right? If you don't have a robust, solid foundation, which is data, you are going to be building on sand, and then you're going to have diminished returns as a result.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting space as well, because obviously we've seen AI for the last couple of years. Like there's a huge explosion in terms of the amount of providers. But where do you see like the big gaps at the moment? You've worked in this space for a long time, both in McKinsey and also where you are now in Invisible Technologies. Like what do you see as how the industry has grown, and where do you see like there's kind of people are winning in terms of, you mentioned about like having really good quality data is key, but are there any other things that you think that companies have a competitive edge being successful in this space if they're good at, whether it's execution or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of in the AI industry, and there's a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of them they are promoting and predicting what's going to happen next. And there's a lot of talking, not a lot of doing. So we have at Invisible really taken we seek to lead with our outcomes, not hype. We want to be clear on what we can do. We want to be very transparent with our clients on what the limitations of AI are and how we would mitigate them. And then all the stuff we're doing is evidence-based. So we've got a concept called a solution sprint. So when we enter into a discovery and like a conversation with the client on how we could help them, we prove our tech works before we charge them for it. So it's a proof of value. We prove our tech works before we charge you for the outcome. And our key kind of secret weapon in doing that is the FDEs, as I mentioned off there, the forward deployed engineers. AI is great, but you need those kind of humans in the loop to make sure that you're getting the best out of the data. So one thing that AI is not good at is escalations, calibration, intervening when it's going down kind of a strange path. Pure automation also struggles with like accountability. So you need that auditability and defensibility for governance to get anything off the ground in a regulated space, or even in kind of just a normal org. A CISO is going to be very hot on making sure we validate the outputs. And human in the loop isn't just manual work when AI goes wrong. It's the quality control. It's training the data at the right moments. It's interacting and interjecting when it needs to ensure the best possible outcome. The FDE are providing to be a key differentiator for us, because AI isn't SaaS and out of the box. It doesn't work off the shelf for everybody. It's not a one size fits all approach. So deploying our FDEs on top of our Invisible platform locally to a client, and this is not professional services. We don't charge for the services of our FDEs. They go in and they work locally with your organization and your engineers to ensure that you get the best possible outcome to solve for your use case, kind of meeting where you are on your AI journey, solving your problem locally with your resources and with your context, and leveraging your tribal knowledge and kind of steering it to a unique outcome, versus AI as a service or platform as a service, where you're just getting, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. Here's our platform, off you go. So the FDEs have been, and we're investing heavily in that space now, is they have been the differentiator for us in how we're achieving that. And Palantir have done this for many years, and I think they've proven by their success in the market that this is the way to go. So finding that right balance between AI and humans, and it's going to be a hybrid approach for the foreseeable. And back to your earlier question about why no AGI, the day we can remove FDEs from the process is the day we are close to RSI and AGI, because you won't need that human to do, there won't be that gap anymore. So the hybrid approach for me is the next 3 to 5 years. Beyond that, we're all optimistic, and I'll be waiting as much as you guys to see how that turns out.
Yeah. It's an exciting space to be in. When you say FTEs, then is like, what's the typical kind of profile of an FTE? Is that someone like with like kind of a similar front end technology experience, or is it more like a full stack engineer, or is it kind of a hybrid of both, or what do you see as being someone like that's an effective?
A good full FDE for me is a full stack engineer with an experienced engineer that is also has the soft skills to be client facing, to go in and ask questions, to not be that kind of 40-year-old guy in his parents' basement with Cheeto dust on his fingers coding at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is someone that's got polished. They've got that client facing experience. So a lot of ex consulting engineers that come from professional services are very good in the role because they can build the rapport, talk to the clients, understand what they need, challenge the hypothesis and break things. And the key thing about FTEs is we don't give them a script and like, here's some work, here's a task, go and do it. It's here's an outcome we want to achieve. You have the autonomy to use your judgment, knowledge, and whatever you can learn from the client to achieve that outcome. So they have that autonomy. So you need the self-starters, the critical thinkers, the good soft skills, and that core kind of full stack capability to be able, that kind of well-rounded kind of engineer to be able to go and one that you would trust to go in and work with your clients where they are unsupervised to achieve an outcome or goal.
Yeah. How do you see the space then? Because like what you mentioned, it's very crowded in terms of like for you play in the space of enterprise you mentioned. And do you think in terms of like the last, say, year or so that it is getting crowded? Is it harder and more competitive to get in and win new business in enterprise? Or is the appetite continuing to grow as the technology advances?
I think the appetite's beginning to grow. I think that we've gone through the stages of working through POCs. Is AI a fad? Is it a bubble? And there's lots of these questions are being asked. I think that we've proven it. So AI has been around in a meaningful way in late 22, early 23. We've now got 3 years. Companies have started to bring in heads of AI to manage and to stand up these processes and how to really harness the power of AI. So we are getting more kind of inbound as clients take it more seriously. And now CFOs are allocating budget to AI-driven initiatives beyond just a co-pilot POC or putting it in one small team and testing it kind of ring-fenced. They're now looking to how they gain that competitive advantage by leveraging AI at scale, because if they don't, they know their competitors will be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess for yourselves at Invisible Technologies then, do you see like having, say, directors, you're a senior director, you have a C-suite team as well. Do you find that like having been thought leaders or experts in the space, is that helpful in also to being able to open doors and generate new business in the enterprise space as well?
I think credibility is important. I think there's a lot of companies out there saying that they can do things that they can't do and just kind of following the hype train. So I think building that trust and credibility early, like in the first couple of conversations, is being honest about what the technology can do and what it can't do. And just, I think building those rapports, being credible, showing where you've been there and done it. So letting your results speak for themselves, I think is good, use case driven, and just sharing our experiences, what we've learned. So building that kind of credibility and authority and showing that competency up front is kind of a differentiator in how we are seeking to be competitive in the space, and just backing ourselves on the tech. As I mentioned earlier with the solution sprints, we won't charge you for tech that we don't know is going to work. So let's work together and find tech that works for you. And if it doesn't work, we will iterate on it until it does. And then we will enter into more kind of standard commercial agreements.
Sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Where do you see then in AI as well? Because like what you say, there is a lot of companies that are out there that are kind of, they give you the technology, they sell it, and it's like kind of pick your ride, as you were saying earlier on, like pick your trip. Do you see like that thought leadership plays a part in that, of like having someone, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the C-suite of the company, having an opinion, but also like what you mentioned, having the case studies or even the insight to be able to back up the success of it. Do you see that as a kind of a way that it can open up more business or help you be more present if you're entering into new markets or even into new verticals?
I think that, so just being credible and coming in and having an honest conversation. A C-suite is going to bring their agenda, and they've usually got a mandate from either their shareholders or their stakeholders or their CEO to have a look and explore the use. I think that we listen to them, and then this is kind of the professional services background where you challenge their hypothesis. So why do you think that? Oh no, we believe this to be true. Well, let's do some discovery. Let's investigate that. And one thing, again, is important is guiding them away from that low-hanging fruit use case, which they know that they'll have a very safe, predictable outcome on a POC, but then they haven't got the compelling event to scale. So one of our field CTOs always probes a lot of our clients to ask the question, don't give us the easy thing, give us the hard thing, give us something that's going to have a material impact on the top line, on the bottom line, and bring top line value to your org. Let's solve a problem that matters, that is going to get the buy-in to enable it to scale. So challenging them to think bigger sometimes, and making sure we get a really thorny issue that it's not, if we solve an issue, the last thing we want is a customer to come back and say, POC was great, but what about? Let's solve for that what about, to make sure that we've covered something holistically that will, in the short term, solve a problem. So if it's a one and done, fine, we've left them better than when we found them. But if we do scale into a kind of a large enterprise agreement, how can we have credibility and that stakeholder buy-in and those champions from that first POC to ensure we're successful in kind of helping and being adopted across the organization?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I guess if the bigger the problem, the more the length of the relationship as well, the more value you can provide.
Absolutely.
For anyone in the space of, like we mentioned before, about if they were looking at like implementing technology into their company, but even people that are in, say, let's say we have people that listen into the show from heads of marketing, VPs of marketing. Where do you see like learning a little bit more about like how you can leverage AI within that? Is there any, even whether it's podcasts or even anything where they can educate themselves, where they may not have a very tech savvy background, but they have a big sense of curiosity in terms of where the technology is going in this year and beyond? What do you look at when you kind of see of like, whether it's blogs or even anything really where they can educate themselves a bit more in the space?
There's one I use, and this is kind of an insider check. There's so much news, right? And it's constant and it's relentless in the news and the advancements and the noise around AI on an almost daily basis. So one I use personally, and this is not a plug for Invisible, it's the AI Daily podcast run by a company in America. And it's 15 to 20 minutes a day, giving you the latest, what's happened today in AI. And like it ties together the construct. This is the upstream and downstream impacts. If one of the models has come out a little bit better than the others, how are they competing? The geopolitical space around China catching up with the States, Europe are a bit behind the building of AI, but we can be adopters and sellers of it more than the States. All of kind of that holistic context, if you want to stay up to date with the applications, the new features and functionality that could benefit your marketing audience, as you mentioned, but also just kind of keeping up with that relentless pace of change, is the AI Daily podcast is one that I recommend. And then there's a bunch of others that are quite niche, but again, I'm a Spotify guy, so searching Spotify kind of AI brief and updates, and there's so many different flavors and horses for courses, as my grandfather would say, around pick your lane based on where you are. Yeah. And there's also going to be a medium or an approach and a format that is better for you and resonates better with you. So kind of look, there's so much good content out there. A daily podcast is my go-to, but there will be more on Spotify if you put in AI tips marketing, AI tips recruitment, whatever your industry or vertical is, there will be good consumable information that's going to be digestible for you on how to bring AI into your own lives and into your own organizations.
Thanks. The one that you mentioned, we'll include it as well in the show notes as well. For Invisible Technologies, what's new? I know you touched on some of where you're working on, where your focus is and stuff, but anything else for the listeners to know? What's new? What's coming down the road for you guys in the next weeks and months?
So reinforcement learning gyms. So environments where we send these teams, and this gets a bit complex, so stay with me. AI agents. So an AI agent is a system or function that operates with the autonomy of a user or system to achieve a goal or an outcome. That is an AI. It's a virtual worker. It's a robot URI, Marcus, that can go in and do a role. They have a role, a goal, and an outcome to define, and they're given access to tools like we are. We get a laptop, a microphone to do this podcast. They will get the tools needed to achieve their outcome. We put those all together. That becomes Agentic AI, and that's a systematic system of multiple agents working together. The bigger the problem, the more agents you're going to need, playing different roles within a team. What we do is we teach these by improvement, by iterations, by learning in the short term. Now, previously, you would do this by putting them on a problem and just iterating and running that flow over and over as you learned and trained the model to achieve your outcome. A reinforcement learning gym is a kind of, think of the holodeck on Star Trek, or think of the Matrix, I think is one that we can all resonate, those of us that are over 25 anyway. And it's more about sending them in there into a simulation for those agents to train and escalate that learning loop and cycles, so they're reinforcing the robustness of their outputs before we then deploy them to a client. So it's like sending a young worker off to a boot camp before you'd send them off to a client or off to a construction site. So we send them there to be a apprentice basically in that. Reinforcement learning and reinforcement gyms or dojos, as they're being called in the industry, are that kind of next exciting thing. And we're starting to explore and work on kind of the application of that within Invisible, which is exciting for me. And then the other two are voice. So we're doing a lot of the voice agent. We're looking to explore the voice agent space where customer contact centers. So you'd speak to an AI as opposed to a human being, which is obviously great if we can get them to work. And then the last one is the computer vision, which is by going multimodal. So in text, images, voice and audio, giving agents the ability to consume that to derive an outcome, much like a human being would, to rather than just ingest in batches and millions of lines of code or text. There's multimodal systems. So we're exploring computer vision is another one that we're keeping a close eye on, and there's a use case or two I may be able to share with you after this.
Great. Yeah, no, very interesting. So yeah, a very exciting space to be in. Dan, it was a pleasure to speak with you. If anyone wants to find you or hear more about Invisible Technologies, where are you most active?
The website is kind of the best place to start, invisibletech.ai, and we have a lot of our updates, reports, briefs. We have a monthly newsletter, and we do a lot of push publications to LinkedIn as well. So you'll find us there, invisibletech.ai.
Perfect. We'll put it on the show notes as well. Dan, thanks again for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Thank you.
Cheers.